Hello, good afternoon
Good
to
morning,
everybody.
good afternoon, good evening to everyone joining us today. My name is Ruby Golo, the Acting Executive Director of Global Chamber in Accra. I also run a business consulting firm called Global Trade Consult, and we help businesses go global with their products and services. Great seeing many of you joining us from different countries, and that is the joy of belonging to Global Chamber. As you can be anywhere in the world and still do meaningful business. I'm actually hosting this event from Michigan in the US, although I'm permanently based in Accra. For those new to Global Chamber, we are the only chamber that operates in more than 195 countries dotted around the world. Our business is to help companies connect with trusted business-minded people all over the world without worrying about traveling to those markets, as our activities are mostly done virtually. I would like, if you like what we do today and want to join the global tribe, then please feel free to talk to us after this event. Some few housekeeping. Please keep your microphones on mute unless you are called to speak. Please feel free to network using the chat room and also post your full contact details so other people can connect with you after this event. So for today, we would like to dive into the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement, which was formulated by the African Union to help Africans trade among themselves easily. And we are so lucky to have our guest speaker, Mr. Kwesi Otribuatin, the Deputy Director of APN Group. He will be telling us more about himself and the work his team is doing. So please get ready with your questions and we will like to take, and I'm sure he will tell us more about himself. So Kwesi, please take it away and tell us all about what is happening within the African Continental Free Trade.
Thank you, Madam Ruby. And a wonderful good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to you all, depending on which part of the world you are in. It's very much afternoon here in Ghana at this moment in time. My name is Kwesi Otrobati. I am the Deputy Director of the African Continental Free Trade Area Policy Network Group, which is a partner to the African Continental Free Trade Area Secretariat itself. We do a lot of facilitation work, and basically we do whatever it takes to support the achievements of the aims and the goals of the wider African Continental Free Trade area. So that's just a quick um, introduction of myself and what we do at APN. Today's interaction is to talk about the AFCFTA. We've heard a lot about the AFCFTA, the African Continental Free Trade Area, over the past few years, and we are doing more to help build capacity and knowledge and understanding of what it is and why it's so important to Africa in particular and generally to the whole world. So it will be my pleasure to take you through the gist of it in the next few minutes. Hopefully, it will take a while, hopefully, not too long, hopefully, not too short. And at the end of it, I'll hope to have your questions and answers. I'll have to have your questions to which I'll help to answer. Okay. May I kindly proceed, Madam Ruby?
Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you so much. Yes. So before I heard so much about the African Continental Free Trade Area, after for short, we refer to it as after for short, it was established on the 21st of March 2018 by the African Continental Free Trade Agreement and has become the largest free trade area by states and by population all across the world. The AFCFTA is a trade agreement among African Union member states aiming to create a single market for goods and services across the continent. It was established to promote intra Africa trade by reducing tariffs and non tariff barriers while promoting free movement of people. After aims to foster economic integration, industrialization, and sustainable development across Africa by enhancing competitiveness, attracting investment to the region. On your screen should be a picture of the Secretary General of the African Continental Free Trade Area Secretariat, His Excellency Wam Kilimene, who is now in his second term in office. He's doing a really wonderful job and we commend him highly. Now, to understand the AFCFTA as a whole, we have to understand what or the importance of productivity and how AFCFTA is to feed into the productivity of Africa. AFCFTA is a tool for triggering African productivity, very key. And for our intents and purpose, we can define productivity here as the capacity of a state or a region to supply the economic demands of her people, the capacity of an African state or region to supply the economic demands of that particular region or state. Economic productivity is a function of how well an economy or industry generates goods and services, often measured by indicators such as gross domestic product. The productivity of Africa emphasizes the capacity of her states to adequately supply the economic demands of her states. The capacity of African states to adequately meet economic demands requires tremendous development in African manufacturing and industries, something that has been very much lacking for the most part. Manufacturing and industrialization are the cornerstone of economic productivity and are thereby essential for sufficiently balancing Africa's demand supply ratio. The ability to adequately supply to Africa's demands compels states to rely on foreign supply. As such, the economic status of Africa is determined by her measure of economic self reliance or economic independence. Simply put, the capacity of any people or any state or region to be able to produce within itself the demands, the economic demands of its own people largely determines its own economic independence. If you look across the African continent, this has long been lacking behind. And these are some of the reasons why the AFCFTA had to happen. AFTA presents Africa with the opportunity for economic interdependence between African states. So doing, member states for the first time in Africa's history become stakeholders of each other's economies due to mutual economic reliance. I'll give you an example. Um, I was in Zambia last year. Let's say, for instance, Ghana receives 50% of her rice from Zambia. Imagine what would happen to Ghana if Zambia was destabilized. It will, for the first time, be in the interest of Ghana to come to the aid and the defense of Zambia. Why? Because Ghana has a stake in Zambia's economy. This has primarily been one of the factors lacking in Africa, where states are independent of one another. States are unable to interweave their economies. And therefore, when one state is in economic turmoil, it doesn't bother the other state. This is one of the reasons why it is so important and necessary for the African Continental Free Trade Area to help to weave African economies together. Through AFTA, member states have more readily and cheaper access to economic resources all over the continent through removal of trade barriers and tariffs, as well as the facilitation of free movement of people. AFTA creates a single continent-wide market access to 1.7 billion Africans. The opening of the African market into a single market means tremendous opportunities for uniquely African wealth creation ensured through the AFCFTA's rules of origin guidelines. Now, what this means is that after guarantees that the goods and services that are going to be on display are going to be uniquely African so that Africans get to benefit first and then we move out to the rest of the world. AFTA creates the platform for meaningful African economic productivity to take place. However, it relies on the industrialization growth of member states to produce goods and services demanded by the continent for trade. I take that again. AFTA creates the platform for meaningful African economic productivity to take place. However, it relies on the industrialization and growth of member states to produce the goods and services demanded by the continent for trade. This is a very key point. What this means is that the AFCFTA is now opening up the market in Africa, where a country where maybe you used to trade only within the borders of Nigeria, you are no longer restricted to Nigeria. The AFCFTA is opening up all borders of member states, all borders of member states. So therefore, if you used to trade for within only Nigeria and you were limited to the market size of Nigeria alone, that is no longer the case. The opportunity to multiply your investments, to multiply your wealth is now possible through the AFCFTA. So what the AFCFTA is doing is it is lowering all barriers, all border barriers, so that we can now trade in multiple quantities across all of Africa. However, what the AFCFTA in itself, and this is key, what it in itself does not do is to produce the goods and services on its own. No, it is simply creating the market opportunity for traders and manufacturers and industrialists to now create on a larger scale to satisfy not the appetites of a state, but the appetites of a continent, of a 1.5 billion people continent. See, very key. So the AFCFTA on its own is not going to be producing. It is simply going to facilitate the production by being the vehicle upon which goods and services can now be disseminated all across the continent. Very good. Now let us look at the productivity of Africa in comparison with a few examples of states across the world. Ghana's GDP in 2023, just last year, stood at 76.37 billion US dollars, and Ghana has a population of 3.48 million people. $76.37 billion being produced by a population of of 3 point, of 33.4 million people. Now, this reflects Ghana's inefficiency in economic productivity as compared to the nation of Czech Republic, which has only a population of 10.8 million people, yet producing a GDP of 290.9 billion US dollars. You see what we're talking about? We have the Czechs, 10.8 million people producing a GDP of 290 plus billion US dollars, whereby Ghana, with a population of 33.4, more than three times the population of Czech Republic, producing only a GDP of 76.37 billion US dollars. I was in the Czech Republic in summer of 2022. The first thing I noticed in the Czech Republic was that if I had to estimate, I would say at least 85% of all vehicles I saw were produced by the car manufacturer Skoda. Skoda isn't well known in Africa, at least it's not well known in Ghana, but it is a Czech vehicle manufacturer, and they are taking care of almost the vast majority of Czech Republic's transportation needs. You see, they are producing the transportation needs of Czechs for Czechs first, and then exporting to the rest of the world, charging the rest of the world a higher rate for purchasing the Skoda than they would charge their own people. This is the example of productivity, the ability to cater to the needs of yourself first. Okay. Now, Ghana ranks at 75th on global GDP rankings. The Czech Republic ranks at 46 in global GDP metrics. So if you look at the numbers comparatively, it doesn't look like it's so significant. But if you look at the value, there is a world of difference in it. Let us take a look at West Africa, the GDP of West Africa. West Africa is composed of 15 countries with a combined population of 451 million people is estimated to have a GDP of around 811 billion US dollars, as compared to the nation of Turkey, which produces a GDP of 906 billion US dollars with a population of only 85 million. You see what we're talking about? We have 85 million Turks producing 906 billion US dollars in GDP, where the combined West Africa, together 15 countries strong, of a population of 451 million people, producing less than the people of Turkey. Very key. Now let us take it to the continental stage. The continent of Africa, as of 2024, has a total GDP of approximately 3 trillion US dollars with a population of 1.5 billion Africans. And how does this compare to the United Kingdom, for example? The United Kingdom also produces 3 trillion US dollars in GDP. However, it has only a population of 67 million people. Therefore, we have 67 million people in the United Kingdom producing just as much GDP as 1.5 billion Africans. You see, so on our own, we can see that when it comes to the economic efficiencies of regions around the world, Africa is lacking extraordinarily behind. Very important. The above GDP per capita reflects the economic inefficiency and failure of Africa's state centric approach to economic liberty. Very, very important statement. The above GDP per capita reflects the economic inefficiency and failure of Africa's state centric approach to economic liberty. Because post World War II, Africa slowly went into independence. Sub-Saharan Africa began with Ghana, and slowly, bit by bit, the rest of the continent received its liberation from colonial rule. But in that time, we have failed to intertwine our economies. We have failed to lower our borders and do business and relate with one another. And so doing, the predicament is what we are seeing here. Okay. So, what is the projected GDP of the continent of Africa under the AFCFTA? How does the AFCFTA matter to Africa? Under the African Continental Free Trade Area, Africa's GDP is projected to experience a significant growth. By 2035, the AFCFTA is expected to increase Africa's exports to the rest of the world by, by 32% and attract substantial foreign direct investment, potentially increasing by 111% to 159%. The combined GDP of Africa under the AFCFTA, this is very key. The combined GDP of Africa under the AFCFTA should reach in excess of 30 trillion US dollars by 2050, which rivals the present GDP of the entire North America. Imagine that. Imagine that the combined GDP of Africa under the AFCFTA could reach in excess of 30 trillion US dollars by 2050. Imagine the impact of that for the African Union's Agenda 2063. If we are producing this much, the African Union will be able to meet the majority of its ambitions by then. The USMCA today, comprising of Mexico, the United States, and Canada, produce a GDP of 30 trillion US dollars today. Today, they produce a GDP of 30 trillion. Africa could rival that in 2050 if the AFCFTA is given the support it needs. Now, AFTA aims to create one of the largest free trade areas globally, consolidating a market of 1.3 billion people. This trade agreement is expected to drive robust economic growth, foster industrialization, and increase intra-Africa trade by 109%. The economic benefits include diversification of sources of growth and exports, which are crucial for reducing dependency on raw material exports and mitigating risk associated with global market volatility. Moreover, the successful implementation of AfTA could lift 30 million Africans out of extreme poverty and contribute up to 450 billion US dollars to Africa's income by 2035, underscoring the transformative potential for the continent's economic landscape. Now, let us take a quick look at how various continents are doing in regards to their continental GDP status. The continent of Asia has a GDP presently of approximately 40 trillion US dollars. Its largest economies, as you can imagine, includes China, which has a GDP of 18 trillion US dollars, followed by Japan at 5 trillion and India at 3.5 trillion US dollars. North America has an approximate GDP of 30 trillion US dollars, with largest economies including the United States at 26.85 trillion, Canada quite a way behind at 2.2 trillion, which is still significant. In comparison to the United States, it looks significant, but in comparison with everyone else around the world, that is significant. And then Mexico following behind with a GDP of 1.3 trillion. Europe has an approximate GDP of 23 trillion US dollars. Now, that is interesting because if you look at what we talked about, Africa by 2050, if the AFCFTA is given the requisite support, could have a GDP of 30 trillion US dollars, meaning that Africa by 2050 could have a GDP superior even to that of Europe. Very key. Europe's largest economies include Germany with a GDP of 4.2 trillion, the United Kingdom with 3.1 trillion, and France with a GDP of 2.8 trillion US dollars. Let's look at South America. That's an approximate GDP of 3.7 trillion US dollars. Largest economies including Brazil at a little over 2 trillion, Argentina at 540 billion, Colombia at 377 billion US dollars. Now, Africa, where I am situated, has an approximate GDP, as we know, of 3 trillion US dollars presently. Largest economies include Nigeria with 395 billion US dollars, South Africa at 401 billion US dollars, and Egypt at 358 billion. These are the three largest economies in Africa. The Oceania region has an approximate GDP of 1.6 trillion. Australia is its largest economy at 1.4 trillion, with New Zealand at 250 billion US dollars. Okay. So now it's very important to understand to look at the African Continental Free Trade Area as the foundation for Africa's interdependence. You see, so the AFCFTA is not going to exist in a vacuum. We have Kwame Nkrumah, we have the likes of Nelson Mandela, we have had some great leaders in the past, all talking about the unity and the need to unify Africa. But how does it happen? It doesn't happen just like that. There is a formula, an accepted formula, and way of doing things that lead to regional integration. So the AFCFTA is not only facilitating trade, but it's increasing African interdependence on every scale. But it is just the start. Now, intra African trade is the economic foundation for which African states primarily interact. Very key, meaning international trade is the first and primary reason for which any two states interact on a long-term basis or on a meaningful basis. Trade. Trade is always the basis for international relations. Trade is always the basis. It is through intra-Africa trade that African states become economic stakeholders of each other. When we become economically reliant on one another, we become economic stakeholders of each other. Meaning that when, let's say, when Rwanda is in some kind of economic turmoil, it is in the interest of all West African states to come to the aid of Rwanda or Zambia or Mozambique or whoever. It is in the interest of the rest of Africa to come to your aid. Why? Because Africa has a stake in your Africa has a stake in your economy. What you have, the rest of Africa needs. And for that reason, your survival means the survival of the rest of Africa. Intra-Africa trade triggers the fusion of African economies toward a more regional approach. Earlier, we talked about how Africa has gone the state-centric approach since independence. Everybody trying to economically liberate themselves within themselves. But now, Africa is prepared through the AFCFTA to start um, seeking for economic liberation through a regional approach. Very important. Now, how does AFTA help to bring about this this interdependence that we talk about? Let's look at integrated market structures. By bringing together 54 African countries into a single market and creating one economic trade bloc that encourages African states to depend on each other for trade and for investment. The combined market of over 1.3 billion people enhances the economic potential of all African member states, fostering the interdependence through shared opportunities. Now, what about policy and governance? The AFCFTA encourages coordinated economic policies and strategies among member states, promoting a cohesive approach to development. The framework supports good governance practices, which are essential for sustainable economic interdependence. This is the dream of Dr. Kwame Nkrumah all those years ago. This is what he's been talking about. With regard to economic diversification, AFTA encourages countries to diversify their economies by promoting trade in diverse sectors, leading to the more balanced and interdependent economic landscape. The development of regional value chains ensure that different countries contribute to various stages of production, fostering deeper economic ties. If you've spent any amount of time on the African continent, you will know that infrastructure is a key challenge, infrastructure and connectivity. With regard to regional projects, AFCFTA promotes regional infrastructural projects that improve connectivity, such as transportation networks and energy grids, making interdependence a practical reality. If I am moving goods and services from one region of Ghana right now to where I am in Accra, the value of those goods from the time they are being moved to the time they get to me greatly escalates. Why is that? Infrastructural challenges. Key. Because our road networks aren't where they should be. Aren't where they should be. Transportation means becomes very expensive because the infrastructure isn't there, leading to inflation. It makes life very difficult in this part of the world. Investments in digital infrastructure enhance connectivity, allowing for seamless business operations and trade across borders. Now, with the opening of borders and the gradual facilitation of movement of people, this takes a toll, or this has an impact, I should say, on employment and human capital. The AFCFTA increases economic activity and trade, leading to job creation, which in turn fosters interdependence as economies grow and develop together. And with regard to skills development, cross border trade and investment encourage the transfer of skills and knowledge, enhancing human capital across the continent. Now, what does this mean? This means a collective economic strength for Africa. A united Africa under AFCFTA has greater bargaining power in global trade negotiations, ensuring better terms and conditions for all African states. An integrated economy is better able to withstand global economic shocks, enhancing collective resilience and stability. Now, very important, When we talk about the AFCFTA, it's important to understand the context in which the AFCFTA is. The AFCFTA alone will not get Africa from where it is to where ultimately we need to be. However, the AFCFTA is the primary and first step to attaining an integrated Africa. But we need to understand the full picture within which integration occurs. The AFCFTA is step one, but step one is also the most important step of all. Free trade agreement is the first step to achieving regional integration. It is the first of five accepted steps. The second step is what we refer to as the customs union. Now, there may be a few components of these stages embedded in the African Continental Free Trade Area, but as AFTA develops, these different steps will have to be established independently. So, from free trade area, we move over to a customs union. From a customs union, we go to a common market, whereby we will see a more free movement of people, goods, and services. People can move freely, similar to what is going on in Europe presently. I mean, basically in Europe, it's fun being in Europe. You get in a train, you're in Amsterdam. Next thing you know, you are in Brussels. Next thing you know, you are in Paris. And it's as if there is absolutely no border because there are no physical borders. From there, we have the economic union and finally the political union. Now, I'll take a second to just explain something. If you look at post World War II, the integration of Europe began with coal and steel enterprise, where after the devastation of World War II, a handful of European nations came together to put their resources together to help um, alleviate their economies from the strife of World War II. So trade was the basis for the present Europe or for the European Union, intra-European trade. Now, when you look at the five steps that we have here, you can easily say Africa is at step one. We are now a free trade area. We are now beginning our journey to regional integration. The European Union, as we stand, is at stage four or five. The European Union is at the stage of economic union. There is, however, another group of people who are at a political union stage. We tend not to regard it because they have been there for so long. Which people am I referring to? I'm referring to the United States of America, the unifying of states under a single federal government. So, the United States of America is the only example that we have today of a region under a political union. It works. It works. But to get there, you must go through the stages that precede it. Very important. So, regional integration involves a process through which countries within a defined geographic region collaborate to enhance political, economic, and social ties. So, with regard to the to the various stages that we refer to, we can see them again on the charts. Sorry, on the slide. The first stage being free trade area, which deals with eliminating tariffs, where countries agree to remove tariffs and other trade barriers on goods traded within the region. The customs union is where member countries adopt a unified tariff policy toward non-member countries. A common market is the extending of integration to include a free movement of goods and services and capital and labor. The economic union is the harmonizing of economic policies, whereby we get to see the aligning of physical, monetary, and economic policies among member states. And finally, as we said, the political union deals with the supranational institutions taking place, whereby it establishes governing bodies with authority over member states in certain areas, such as the European Parliament, in the EU, and the United States federal government. This comprises our the slides for our discussion for today. I will now take any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Kwesi. That was a wonderful presentation and interesting figures that you presented. The floor is now open for questions. I can see in the chat box, Professor Antis wants you to share the planned contribution of AFCFTA to education, entrepreneurship, trade and business funding in Africa.
Sorry, can you please take that again? My sound is a little
Okay.
low. Yeah.
Prof, would you want to ask your question directly?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Golo. Mr. Kwasi, first of all, I want to really acknowledge you for an incredible presentation. A tremendous amount of work behind it and a tremendous plan to really develop Africa to where it belongs as a continent in the world. My question is, having been a professor of 40 years in the US and in graduate school for business and background in science, the question I have is the value of education, the value of teaching entrepreneurship in the global environment, and the ability to fund businesses are critical to success. Where do you see the contribution of AFCFTA to education, entrepreneurship, and capital development in Africa?
Okay, thank you so much for that, sir. Excellent question. I love your question. Capacity building is a key component of um, the AFCFTA at the moment. This is a new paradigm to Africa. Africa has never seen integration, even at the first stage level of the free trade area. When you go to African schools and African businesses, SMEs, and so on, as at now, as we speak, there is very little knowledge and understanding of the existence of the AFCFTA. So we have people going to school, learning business and so on, and they don't know that the market is opening up into a regional market. They don't know. Businesses don't know up to now that they can now trade within the AFCFTA to a market beyond the market that they know, that they've always known. So it is of essential importance that we do more to create awareness. When it comes to our education, it's important that policies be formed to inculcate regional integration and regional studies and the AFCFTA in our secondary schools and in our universities. For instance, in Ghana, we have the Ghana Institute of Management and Public Administration, GIMPA, where they have a program called the EMIRAT Program, Executive Master of Arts in Regional Integration and African Development, where they are teaching um, members of the public on the AFCFTA and helping them to understand that the African continent is transforming. It is no longer what they used to know. We are becoming a different people, a more diverse people. So there is the need to build capacity through education and also for the AFCF Secretariat, which it is doing, and APN is supporting them in that, to develop awareness and understandings to businesses and SMEs to know that the market paradigm has shifted. It's no longer what they knew before. If you were making $10 a day before, given the multitude in which the multitude in market availability or market accessibility that is now available, you no longer have to be restricted to what you're making before. And the interesting thing is that the first people to really get to understand the AFCFTA and the world that is opening Africa to, the first will be those to profit the most. The first will be those to profit the most. So it is key when it comes to education. We need to build capacity. We need to get it into the primary schools, into the secondary schools. We need to get it into the universities. They need to understand that Africa is changing. The Africa of Nkrumah and of Sankara is now coming to pass slowly. It happens in stages, but the steps has begun. The process has begun. I hope that answers your question, sir.
Oh, totally. Thank you so much, Mr. Kwasi. If I may have a follow-up, you're such a unique individual. It's so great to have you here that I have to ask this question. My grandfather, a chemist, helped develop Libya, Tunisia, and Ethiopia in the chemical business for trade many, many moons ago. one of the interesting things that I know as a kid is that because of the colonization, French and Portuguese and Dutch, etc., there are really different cultures develop in Africa. How do you see the journey, and that's the same problem we have with the EU, how do you see the journey of such different cultures? How do you actually put them together?
Okay, thank you for that question. That's a very beautiful question, and I'm glad you mentioned Libya because a few years back, I remember many years ago, I think I was a lot younger, and I remember listening to Gaddafi talking about attempts to integrate Africa. You know, he had so many ideas that the truth is the continent rather needs. Now, Africa is a continent of tremendously diverse cultures. Tremendously diverse cultures. I'm glad you mentioned examples of North Africa. Even within West Africa, we are so different. Even within a single nation, the cultures within Ghana is so many different cultures with so many wild variances. So there is already going to be the challenge of integration on that level. But here is the key. Just like with Europe post World War II, culture aside, survival is key. People are willing to how do I put it? People are willing to put trade first if it means getting food on their tables. We may differ, but if I am hungry or I don't have the demands that I need to survive, and my neighbor has those needs, I am far more likely to put my culture and my biases a little to the background to get the little bread I need first. That's why trade is so important. Trade is where the conversation begins. The conversation begins. We begin through trading, we begin interacting, very important. Trade Trade leads to interaction between different people. Different people. If you look at the continent of Africa right now, Africa trades wildly with China. Africa has very little cultural similarities between itself and China, yet we trade just fine. Why? Because it started somewhere. In the beginning, it looked so foreign. They looked so foreign to us. But the more we traded, the more we got to understand them to the point where we found common grounds. Not only finding common grounds, but we got to the point whereby we can now appreciate their culture and they can now appreciate our culture. But then the bridge to bringing those cultural differences together starts with trade. It starts with trade, but it doesn't end with trade, but it begins with trade. I hope that helps, sir.
Thank you so much.
I'm enjoying the conversation that is going on. As a service provider, I have a question as well, Kwesi. So, how do I get registered to partake in the African Continental Free Trade platform? Is there a place that I have to register and get myself known?
Okay, thank you for that question. Very, very, very important. The excuse me, the Secretariat of the African Continental Free Trade Area is based at the moment in Ghana, or is based in Ghana. The Secretariat has within it what we refer to as the AFTA National Coordinating Office. I'm very happy you asked this question. This is very key because anyone listening to this conversation who is interested in trading under AFTA needs to know this. Within the Secretariat is the National Coordinating Office. It's headed by Dr. Farid Arthur, very wonderful gentleman. Now, it is the duty and the role of the AFTA National Coordinating Office to facilitate the basic, not to use that word in a negative way, but to assist the ordinary trader, no matter who you are. If you want to trade under AFTA, if you have a bottle of water and you want to trade that water from Ghana to Nigeria to Kenya to Burkina Faso, get in touch with the AFTA National Coordinating Office. It is their duty to guide you in this process. So that will be your first step to get in touch with the National Coordinating Office. Equally, we have organizations like the organization of which I'm part of, the APN, who will help you and facilitate you and help you to navigate and network to places like the After National Coordinating Office. If you think you don't know how to get in touch with the relevant people, organizations like APN are beyond happy to help you to get in touch with them. And from the National Coordinating Office, They will take you step by step by step to know what must be done for you to trade within AFTA. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Well, the audience, you have the chance to ask your questions.
Can I ask a question, Ruby?
Yes, please.
Oh, okay. All right. Hello, greetings, Mr. Kwesi. How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
Good. I'm based here in Los Angeles, California, but I'm also an installed development queen in the central region of Ghana. And my mission, my passion is to really bring the diaspora together with Africa to join forces and invest in each other and so forth. And I just got through doing a capacity building. I organized an 8-week capacity building program for small businesses in Africa and the US, which Ruby was one of the speakers for the 8 weeks. But this is my intention, is really to mobilize us so we can start working together. And I just wanted to hear your thoughts on what you would say to the diaspora like me who have a strong interest in partnering with the African community. How can we be a part of AFCFTA? I do know the U.S. signed an agreement I found online. They signed a partnership agreement with after. But do you have anything specific that you would like to say to us as the diaspora?
Okay, thank you so much for that question. And in fact, I'm glad you brought up the diaspora because diaspora is very important. There was something I meant to mention with diaspora, I forgot, but I'll try and mention it in this answer. The diaspora is very pivotal when it comes to African integration. It's very key. And at this stage of integration, what can really help is the AFCFTA is at a stage where we are um, doing much in terms of awareness creation. We are doing much in terms of our awareness creation on the continent at the moment. What the diaspora can do that will be of key benefits to the African Continental Federation itself is to help in creating the awareness where you are. Very key. Help to create the awareness where you are. Let people get to understand that Africa is opening up. We are no longer as closed a society as we used to be. We are opening up. You can show them some of the figures. I can make my slides available to you. I'm sure Madam Ruby can make it available to you. I have no problem with that. They can look at the figures, look at the direction in which Africa is going. Very important. Now, in relation to the diaspora, I want to say something very important. It's a little off topic, but still on topic, and with regard to race. And I want everybody to hear me very clearly. At the beginning of my lecture, I spoke about productivity. Let me tell you something. In my research, I have come to find that the reason why we have racism against the black race isn't because black is unpleasant or black is not nice. No, the reason or the baseline for racism is because Africa, or rather, let me say, the black skin has become synonymous with underproductivity on the global scale. We have become known for being the only race that doesn't adequately contribute to global productivity. And I believe from my research, that is the reason why this persists. We have, of course, the examples of certain African personalities doing extraordinary things. Barack Obama, Kofi Annan, we've seen incredible Africans, LeBron James, doing incredible things on the international stage. However, that remains the exception to the rule. If we can move the continent of Africa from where it has been to where it needs to be, where it can get to with the AFCFTA, Africa's place in economic productivity will be transformed. It will be transformed. And when the blackness of Africa, or when Africa becomes known for its productivity, all Africans on the continent and the diaspora will be afforded that level of respectability because the blackness of Africa is now known for productivity, same as some other races. Okay, same as other races. So the destiny of what it is to be black is directly tied to the productivity of African continent, of the African continent. It doesn't matter how much, it may not matter as much how much productivity goes on in the diaspora. It's important to develop there, of course it is. However, the mainland is the African continent. Nigeria, for example, Nigeria is the single most populated black nation in the world, meaning Nigeria has a key role to play when it comes to transforming the image of what it is to be African and what it is to be black. So, Africa, the continent of Africa, no matter what goes on outside of the continent, it will remain the station for all, for what it is to be black. If people want to know what to expect of black people, they will first and foremost look to the black continent. They will turn on CNN, they will look at what CNN is showing them of Africa. Turn on Al Jazeera, what's Al Jazeera showing them of Africa. It will matter less what is going on elsewhere in black populations if the mainland of Africa is underproducing. We will be characterized for that. We will be ascribed as being unproductive. So the only way to truly transform the image of what it is to be black is to transform the productivity of the African continent. Be known for being a supplier, a global economic supplier to the world. Don't be known simply for being the recipients, simply receiving all the time. Be known for being the one who gives. That has to become the destiny of black people of the African continent, and I believe that is the direction that the AFCFTA is setting us on. Thank you.
Thank you. Well said. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any more questions for Kwesi? Zazie, I see you in the audience. Do you have a question?
Just a quick question, Ruby. Thank you. Beautiful presentation, really very knowledgeable, and loved it. It was great perspectives on every angle. And I love the fact that you emphasize how important it is and trade is to improving prosperity. When you see what's with CFTA now, what's next? What changes do you see in the next few years? What are the improvements in the agreement that you're hoping and expecting to see over the next several years?
Okay, thank you so much. The AFCFTA at this point has succeeded in setting out its protocols. The protocols are the rules and regulations that will govern trade within the AFCFTA. The rules and regulations. I believe there are 7 protocols that are governing the rules and regulations of the AFCFTA. What is most important at this point, along with capacity building, is the effective implementation of these protocols. The successful implementation of the protocols will help to facilitate the successful implementation of the trade itself. We don't just want to see an AFCFTA that is on paper. No, we want to see an AFCFTA whereby you can wake up in Africa, similar to Europe, where you can wake up in Africa, go to a store, and this product is brought to Ghana from Malawi, it's brought to Ghana from Zimbabwe, it's brought to Ghana from Mozambique. We want to see it in our daily lives. And that's where the implementation is so key. We want to see it affecting the lives of each and every single African. Very important. That is the stage that we need to get to next, the implementation stage, where we get to see the AFCFTA working. Because the more we get to see it working, the easier it becomes for everyone else to get on board. The easier it is for for non-African states to want to even trade with Africa as a region. So at this point, what we really want to see is the AFCFTA physically being implemented, the reality of it. We want to see fabrics coming in from Kenya. We want to see all kind, whatever we can see. I wouldn't say it doesn't matter so much what it is, of course, because the whole point of trade is to supply to a demand. So the demands that the African continent has now, or rather, let me say the demands that, for example, Ghana has now, that Ghana is unable to get within itself. We want to see Ghana getting it from Togo. We want to see Ghana getting it from Namibia. We want to see Ghana getting it from Botswana. But we want to first and foremost see Africans receiving their supply from Africans first, with the exception of if we're looking for a particular supply that cannot be generated within the African continent, then we should be ready to look to nations or states outside of the African continent if we can't go on to produce it ourselves. But then we want to be able to physically see African supplies to African demands for the very first time. I hope that helps.
It does. Thank you very much. What we've seen certainly in other parts of the world with these kinds of trade agreements is the transparency highlights the countries and the systems that work and also the ones that don't work. And that puts pressure on the ones that don't work. It puts pressure on the corruption part to improve and to get better. And so, so thank you for your leadership in this area. We certainly hope for continued progress.
Thank you, sir.
Hello, hello, Ruby.
Yes,
Hello.
go ahead. After that, we'll take from Sika.
Ruby, can you hear me? Sorry, it's Zazie.
Kindly speak up for me, please.
I'm trying. My name is Zazie. Ruby, you asked me to comment.
Oh, yes. Thank you.
I don't know if you can hear me. Our sound is very bad where we're at the moment.
We can hear you.
Hello, Doug. Hello, Professor Ansis, Ruby, Kwazi. So lovely to be here. I have many questions and many things I would like to talk about, but I think the starting point is to just say thank you to everybody for relevant questions, and so lovely to be hearing more about the Free Trade Union. Kwazi, you may not know, I'm South African, and in Estonia, we're developing a digital platform for cross-border trade with a focus on Africa and African Free Trade Union in particular. So I'd love to talk to you all more, but I think everybody's questions have been so relevant, both on a cultural level, on a business level, and I'd love to talk more to all of you, but I think it's better to open the floor to more questions from everybody else.
Oh, sure. Thank you so much. I'll love
You're
to.
welcome. I look forward to it.
All right, Sika, you can ask your question. Your hand is up.
Thank you so much. Thank you for a very rich presentation. Something triggered something in my mind when I heard Doug's question about the diaspora participation. And I remembered that during the Exim, Africa Exim Bank's roadshow, especially the one in Accra, maybe a couple of years ago, the year before, and then this year, I think they took it to the Bahamas. It was precisely to involve at least the diaspora, the African diaspora markets, starting with the Caribbean. So, Doug, there's hope in that direction. I don't know whether it will expand to the US, but at least I know that there is some involvement with the Caribbean markets. And I wonder if, Kweku, you can comment on that.
Yes, thank you. Yes, I'm very much aware of the events to which you are speaking of. I think the Secretary General was there. I wasn't there myself, but I was following them. I have colleagues who were in the Bahamas just recently, not too long ago, just I think a few weeks back. The diaspora is a very key aspect of, or let me say, it's a very key component of Africa. We very much consider the diaspora to be fully a part of Africa. There are still discussions, I'm aware there are still discussions ongoing regarding the formalization of the diaspora into the African Continental Free Trade Agreement itself. I will need to be better abreast with where that conversation is at the moment, but I am aware that it is ongoing, hence why the Secretary General, along with key officials, were in the Bahamas recently. So we very much want the diaspora to be another component, just another part of the free trade agreement, as much as Nigeria or any other African country is. So that conversation is very much ongoing, and it's our hope that sooner rather than later we will get tangible responses in that aspect.
Tika, does that answer your question?
Yes, indeed. Thank you.
Thank you
Okay.
so much, Mom.
Do we have any more questions? Otherwise, we'll close the section. No? Okay. Kwesi, on behalf of Global Chamber Accra Metro, we would like to really thank you for your time and presentation with us today. Very insightful. And I'm sure many other people will want to engage with you after this event. So thank you so much. Doug, I don't know if you are still with us. Doug is the CEO of Global Chamber. If you want to make a closing remark, that would be great.
Wonderful, Ruby. I hope you're enjoying this summer in Michigan. It's certainly the best place to the best time of year to enjoy Michigan. All 2 weeks of summer in Michigan. Really important conversation today on trade, and just love the fact that the conversation was so deep and so knowledgeable and full of facts and things for us to build off of. Let's continue this discussion. Ruby, thank you for your leadership in bringing this important topic to the front and center. It really surrounds us with the framework to facilitate the things that we want to do in trade. And so thank you all for your work in trade. Let's continue to make progress. And let's also continue to put the pressure on the entities that are around us to understand the importance of trade and to continue to drive the changes that facilitate easier trade, less walls, less obstacles, less tariffs, less things that get in the way of trade, and more easier ways for us to trade between countries. It's so important for the world, especially right now. Reading the news, it's frightening what's going on in the world. There's just so much craziness, and trade keeps us together. It glues the countries together. They say that borders that have more trade require fewer soldiers. And I think we all understand and agree that that's the case. And so let's continue to do our work as effectively as we can to make the world a better place. Back to you, Ruby. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for attending today. We meet every last Tuesday of the month. So look out for our next section, which will be on the August 27, and we'll be discussing mental health issues relating to work places. So thank you all, and stay well. See you all soon. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, Ruby.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ruby.